The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the doctor who conveniently dies before he remembers to put your hands on, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Anthony, you know what time of year this is?
Yeah.
It's Decem-Burton!
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, last week I was like, Edward Scissorhands doesn't really feel, or isn't really a Christmas movie, but it feels like it. But it's totally a Christmas movie. I forgot how Christmassy it gets at the end.
I mean, it even starts off with the snowy 20th Century Fox and kind of ominous Christmas music, but that's a Burton thing. Anyway,
oh yeah,
right. And he also has a thing at this time for claymation doors. Yeah, because the intro we kind of zoom in on obviously the door of the mansion, but it does look like it was just a claymation sculpture or clay sculpture, right?
Yeah, there's definitely some miniature shots in this too. Mm-hmm. Which I guess Beetlejuice used a lot of those too. So he likes playing with a fake world inside the real world.
Right. A very, I don't know if I would say heightened reality, or it's a different type of reality altogether, right?
Yeah. I think heightened. I think that makes sense. Everything is, this movie's set in the suburbs, but it's a heightened version. It's if you were describing the suburbs to someone who'd never been and you were going really over the top, this might be what they might imagine, but it's not actually what they're like.
Right. Well, one thing I hope for sure is that you're not in Adams, because, man, they go crazy with the pastel. Okay? All right, but let's get into this thing.
Yeah, so like you said, it starts off, we get the 20th Century Fox logo. It's all frozen. Mm-hmm. The credits are over these shots of this cobweb covered mansion.
Right. A bunch of big actors, or people who at one time were big actors. I don't think any of these people have really fallen out. You've got Johnny Depp, obviously Edward Scissorhands. We have Winona Ryder playing Kim. She's come back with Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. And then Anthony Michael Hall, who's never really gone away, but he's been in the background, especially with Halloween Kills. Good grief.
Yeah.
And Diane West, I don't know. We really don't hear.
She's just one of those character actresses who's I think her big thing is she's in a bunch of Woody Allen movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's rough.
Yeah. She's just one of those and I don't know that she's done a lot in recent years, but yeah, it's you always say, she's just one of those hey, it's that lady. I've seen her in so many things, but I can't quite settle on one thing. Right,
and then of course we got Alan Arkin as the dad. Best dad. I don't think there's been too many dads as good as this dad.
Yeah.
Of course, Vincent Price in one of his last roles, just being awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, I think this is only, this is kind of the old grandpa mode for Vincent Price.
Yeah. He's not really creepy in this. It's,
at all,
he's a very, sweet, he's barely in it, but, where he is there, he's a very loving, kind character.
Right, 100%. And, of course, Conchata Ferrell. Another one of those lady actresses. Okay, do you know where Conchata, what all she's been in?
Yeah, she's always just the grouchy kind of. I think probably most people would know her from 2.5 Men or something now. That's probably her biggest thing.
Exactly. But she did some stints on did mainly TV before she passed away.
She's also in Krampus. That's probably like her most recent like genre thing. Like she's
so good.
She's the aunt in that, and she's so good in that.
And we also have Nick Carter.
Nick Carter, like the
Backstreet Boys. Nick Carter.
Who is he in it?
He was a uncredited role. He is Slip and Slide Kid.
Oh, okay.
That's who he is. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I know he's not Kevin, because that's the kid from like all the Honey I Shrunk the Kids movies.
Right? Man, those movies. Oh, and then also Olan Jones, if you're a big fan. She was in Sanguinarium, the X-Files, and in Mars Attacks, because once you go Burton, he never really lets you go.
Right.
Oh, and in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, she played Shelley, if you saw that movie. Which not many people did, I don't think.
Yeah. Those books were good, but yeah, that movie was...
Yeah. You know, that was during the age of, hey, let's cash in on all the books that kids like. Mm-hmm. And none of them were done well. And of course, you know who did the music. Do I even need to say it?
Yeah.
Some chucklehead from Oingo Boingo.
Yeah, and the score in this is just beautiful.
Oh, yeah, always. I mean... Like, I feel like Danny Elfman and Tim Burton are just like, we get each other, you know? Like, on a fundamental level. It's like, Burton obviously does the visuals, Elfman does the music. They're good, everything matches. I don't think they've ever done one that's been weird.
You know, I just realized, so, we did Weird Science a while ago, and it had an Oingo Boingo song and Anthony Michael Hall.
Wait a second. Is Anthony Michael Hall low-key a Burton mainstay, or is he just an Elfman?
Yeah.
You know, who knows? Huh. Interesting. Could you imagine if we got Danny... Sorry to derail the conversation here, but could you imagine if Danny Elfman did the soundtrack to Halloween Kills?
Oh, wow.
Interesting. What a world. All right.
Different than the John Carpenter stuff.
Yeah, so going back to the movie we watched.
Right.
So yeah, as you said, in the lab, there's a lot of weird, like, spherical head imagery.
Yeah, it's like it's like a factory, but all the pieces look kind of human. Right. They're like very round, and like they have like heads and hands and stuff.
Like, all right, sorry to derail the conversation one more time, but apparently my ADHD is kicking in hardcore. Do you think that the people from Nier Automata, or just even the Nier games, like, drew inspiration from this? Because it feels like they did.
Could be.
Like, there's a character named Emil. He looks like the faces of the robots that are kind of just jumping up and down.
Oh, yeah, they're like the cookie cutter ones.
Yeah, the cookie cutter robots. Which I don't know how effective they are, but hey, we'll find out when we get there. Yeah, so then we cut to a miniature, the miniature of a castle on a hill. They call it a mansion. That's a castle. I'm sorry. And I actually put in my notes, see, Anthony, I told you he likes weird hills at this stage because it's on a weird fucking hill.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yep, all right.
And we see that there's like an old woman looking out the window at this, and she's like tucking her granddaughter into bed.
Clearly, old lady Winona Ryder.
Oh yeah. And they kind of try to not give that away here at the beginning, but yeah, I mean it's definitely because that's kind of like the big payoff is like her saying that but it's pretty clear from the beginning.
If you have eyes in your head, you see where this is going later.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so of course, the granddaughter, it's snowing outside, and the granddaughter's like, Grandma, where does snow come from?
Well, kids, a long time ago, there was this man who lived all alone.
Yeah, we're not going to be talking about the precipitation cycle here.
Exactly.
This is where
it comes from one man who lives on a mansion.
Yeah. A man with scissors for hands.
Right.
Yeah, so she kind of like gives a little bit of the backstory, but then we kind of we get more of it as we go. But so basically, there was an inventor who lived in the spooky mansion on the hill. He created a man, gave him a heart and a brain, but he died before he could finish him. Mm-hmm. And that man's name was Edward.
Dun dun dun. But they never call him Scissorhands.
No, he's always just Edward.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, so at that point, we also get like a overtop view of a snowy suburb, right? And then quickly it transforms from a snowy suburb to just like regular California with everything in pastel, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so every house is like one specific color, and everything around the house matches and everything. It's it's definitely a weird look. But we meet Peg, who is kind of sort of she's almost the main character of this. Like Edward and Kim, Peg's daughter, are kind of like the central figure, but like Peg really, I think Peg is in every scene almost, maybe
pretty
more
close.
Than Edward.
Yeah.
And
she definitely basically makes the action of the movie happen, right?
Oh, for sure. And so,
but she's also an Avon lady, so she's into multi-level marketing.
Right. And so first she goes to her neighbor Helen and tries to sell the aforementioned conchata. And she's just like, Peg, I never buy anything from you. I don't know why you keep doing this. And she's like,
I know. Fair enough. At least they have that good rapport, right?
Yeah. It's like this neighborhood, like everybody's a little bit too much in everybody's business, but people seem to be, they genuinely seem to care about their neighbors at least.
Mm-hmm. Then we get our wonderful friend Joyce, who is pretty much thirsting over she thirsts over pretty much everybody, right?
Oh, yeah.
But in this case, it's a repairman.
Yeah.
What is it, a dishwasher repairman?
Yeah. He may be a plumber or something, but yeah, he's working on her dishwasher, and he's like, if you just clean the trap out, I won't have to keep coming out. And she's like, no, that's too much for, my little woman's brain. You got to just keep coming out. And it's just, she just wants the guy
to fix my food trap. Okay, that's not innuendo at all.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Peg ends up ringing her doorbell then, and she's like, I've got company, get out of here. Like,
Right. If there's a vehicle parking, don't come knocking.
Right.
Yeah, effectively.
And
then
so
we get Peg trying to sell something to a teenage girl, and the girl's like, look, it's nice, but I ain't got no money.
Yeah.
I'm broke. I'm a teenager.
Yeah, and then she goes and looks at she sees like another house that there's like a kind of creepy church lady inside playing an organ.
Right. The actress is Owen Jones, as I mentioned earlier. What is Esmeralda? What a name for a creepy church lady.
Yeah, and so she's like, at this point, Peg's like, okay, no, I'm not even, I can't even deal with that defeat. Like, she's clearly not interested, so she moves on. And then she's like, she gets in her car, and she's just like, man, it has been a day.
By the way, Plymouth Duster, if you're into like old muscly cars. I don't know if it would necessarily be a muscle car.
Okay, yeah. And yeah, so she's like, she kind of looks out the window and sees the mansion up on the hill and is just like, maybe this will be the win for me today. And so she heads up there.
I like how the mansion / Castle Hill is just at the end of the street. It's pretty good. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Yeah, and so there's like a gate, and she goes, and outside it's like, it's all run down. There's vines growing over everything. Everything looks dead and just terrible. But then as soon as she goes,
gargoyles everywhere.
Oh yeah. Just full on like the haunted house that like when you're a kid in the neighborhood, like everybody like dares, I bet you won't go through there. And
the old witch house or whatever.
Yeah, but then as soon as she goes through the gate, it's a whole different world. It's just like this beautiful, lush garden. Everything is green and blooming, and there are all these
topiary everywhere.
Yeah, all these like really elaborate, like hedge sculptures. Most of them animals, but there's like big arches and just like all kinds of just intricate work here.
And oddly enough, a giant hand topiary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so she's like surprised, like she thought it was going to be, continue to be run down. So she goes to the door and knocks, and no one answers.
It turns out somebody's looking at her through a window.
Yeah.
That's what kind of makes her go, oh, somebody's here. I've got customer.
Yeah. And so she kind of like, no one answers the door, but then she just pushes and it's not latched or locked. And so she just kind of decides to let herself in.
Yeah. And of course, Avon calling,
Yeah. And, she's like calling out. She's trying to like not be like an intruder, but, she's just like, you don't need to be scared. I'm just here to help. And, like this is it's a obviously, this is the room that we saw earlier. It's a big open room. There's strange equipment everywhere, cobwebs on everything. Mm-hmm. And she like goes up this like flight of stairs and ends up finding like an attic with like a big hole in the roof.
Right, and there's a fireplace with a bed and like a vision board behind it.
Yeah.
With weirdly enough, a lot of Jesus imagery. Yeah. There's at least a few nativity scenes there, right?
Yeah. And then she notices that like back in a corner and like a like where like the roof is angled down in the darkness, there's just like a person crouching there, which is a terrifying visual. Like,
well, especially since she hears snip, 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 and there's the person has big ass scissors on their hands.
Mm-hmm. And she's instantly like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to have disturbed you. I'll let myself out. It's okay. You don't need to do it." And then they step forward and they're like, "Don't go.
Yeah, please don't go. I'm not finished."
Yeah, and so, like she goes from like scared, she's like interested and then scared and then like now she's curious, and so yeah, he says, or she's like, where are your parents? Where's your mom? Where's your dad? And he's like, he didn't wake up.
Yeah, so we know.
Yeah.
We know what happened.
And but of course, so obviously this is Edward Scissorhands, and he's like, got all these series of blades on his fingers. He's in this
scars on his face.
Yeah, he's got scars all over his face and like a leather.
It's kind of a gimp suit.
Yeah, it's like neck to ankles, like full body suit with all kinds of weird straps and buckles and stuff.
Right. If this wasn't like a family movie, I guess this would be a bondage gear, or at least inspired some bondage gear.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you said, he's got scars all over his face, and Peg sells Avon. She's like, I've got some stuff that might help with your scars, and she kind of like puts some astringent on there to like reduce the risk of infection. And he's just kind of very calm and letting her. Yeah.
And of course, she's like, hey, what's your name? And he's like, Edward. Which I'm not saying that inspired Full Metal Alchemist, but I'm also not saying that. But yeah.
And then we pretty much just cut to them in her car headed to her house. And
I do love this shot because Edward is just smiling like an absolute lunatic. he's just not even like the full teeth, but definitely a wide smile. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if anyone saw this guy, they would obviously be like, he is crazy. And they kind of do. They kind of look at him like he's a little nuts.
Yeah, I mean, because, of course, like, he's not left the mansion. Like, he's not left the gates, at least. So this is, like, a whole new world for him. There's a point where he, like, tries to point out something and almost cuts Peg. And she's
right
like,
across the face.
Yeah. But she's like, no, it's okay. I get it. You should be excited. Like, you don't need to be ashamed about that.
Just be a little more careful. That's all.
Yeah, and she's just, like... She's the perfect person to have found him. She's just like so kind and encouraging and, just willing to kind of meet him where he is, basically.
Best mom.
And yeah, we also start to see that like, some of the neighbors are kind of watching them a little bit.
Right. We've got a lady with really big hair known as Marge, and she's talking to Helen, and they start obviously gossiping about who this weird person is with Peg.
Yeah, I mean, like, they start meeting on the street. Well, I think they meet a little bit later, but they start making phone calls pretty much right away.
Right, they're arranging the meetup on the corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that, like, life's kind of dull in the suburbs, and, like, anything even slightly out of the ordinary, everyone's just going to latch onto it.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, we have does this lady ever get a name? Like, she appears in, like, 4 or 5 scenes, but she's, like, the one that didn't really get... She doesn't have much presence in the movie. But she's talking to Joyce at this point, and Joyce is like, yo, I want to see who this guy is. Because Joyce is going to get it, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, Joyce, there's a new man in town. Joyce is definitely going to be curious.
Right, exactly. No shame. Let her do what she want to do.
Yeah.
The shame will come later when she acts like an asshole.
Yeah, true. But so, yeah, Peg gets Edward home and, like, kind of starts giving him a tour of the house. She shows him, like... this whole bookshelf full of like family photos.
Oh yeah, and he's loving it. He's like, "This is amazing."
Even though I live on a mission. Clear right away. Like he sees, or she shows her daughter Kim, and you can tell right away that he's like smitten by her.
Right, and it's weird because hey, that's Anthony and Michael Hall standing behind Winona Ryder, and it looks like they're going to prom, which turns out the guy's name is Jim. So Jim and Kim went to prom and
right.
presumably dating.
Yeah, and when she's like kind of giving him this tour, like everything in this house is like alien to him. There's one little bit where like she's gonna take him down the hall, and there's like there's like a table in the corner, and he like starts to reach for something, and she's like, "Those are grapes," and she like pulls his hand. I think they're like fake grapes, but just like the way that just like everything is weird to him, and she's just like, you don't have to touch everything. Like just we'll explain it all as we go.
Right. She sets him up with some of her husband's old clothes, which that's interesting. How's this going to work for him?
Yeah, I'm still not sure how, like, you never really see it. There's a lot of, like, we cut away and then we cut back and he's wearing clothes, and it's like, I don't know how that actually came together.
Right. Where he didn't cut them to pieces?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, of course, she sets up Edward in her daughter Kim's room. And, I don't know that I would say that looks like a teenage girl's room. An older teenage girl's room. It definitely, like the tween, that probably fits more for the tween. But once again, everything's hyper-colored basically and stylized. And
yeah. Peg's just like, here's some clothes. The phone starts ringing. She's like, I'll let you get changed and everything, and I'll be back.
Right, he just drops the pants and like steps into them, but doesn't pull them up yet.
Yeah,
but he also doesn't take off his suit.
Yeah. He keeps the leather gear on for the whole movie. It's just like his skin, basically.
I mean, it may very well be. We don't know exactly.
Yeah, that's true. And then we get the moment that we have to have in a Frankenstein movie where he like looks in the mirror and sees himself. And starts kind of like tapping on the glass, like, is that me? And he manages to cut his face in the process. He like steps back scared and manages to poke a hole in Kim's waterbed. And like a little jet stream of water comes out, and he just takes a stuffed animal and sets it on top of it to like cover it up.
That'll fix it. Yeah, that's how that works with old waterbeds. Yeah.
And it seems to in this case, because like they don't address it for at this point.
Oh dear God! If this was an actual waterbed, it wouldn't necessarily spray out like that, but immediately it would like deflate, and all the water would just be on top of the bed.
Oh yeah. I had a waterbed growing up, and they're just so weird. Like,
it's nice to sleep on, but it's awful when you're sleeping and they break.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst.
Just wake up soaked, or the heater dies and you wake up freezing because it just goes to like cold water overnight.
Oh, you had the fancy waterbed, did you? Nice. I just had to. Well, my cousin really just had it's just basically a cushion of water. But yeah, so we also have the neighborhood ladies gathering around Peg's house, kind of like, what's going on? And then our friendly neighborhood church lady, which I'm glad to see that nothing has changed, is just staring out with her votive candles lining the windowsill, just like, these are devil worshippers. Or she doesn't say anything. She just looks like them, like they're insane. But
yeah, Peg gets a call from, I think Marge calls her and is asking about Edward, and she, she's kind of trying to explain things, but then she's like, I gotta go. She hangs up. The phone immediately rings again. So she just like turns on the answering machine.
Right, but weirdly enough, doesn't she say that, hey, I have a doctor friend that may be able to help? Or is that a little bit later? Because there's always this doctor that might be able to help but never appears.
Yeah, I think like 4 or 5 different characters tell him they have a doctor friend, but like, we never meet this doctor friend, or if it's the same doctor friend.
But of course, as Peg's working on Edward, she decides, I do need to consult my big Avon handbook before we get you looking as presentable as you should.
Cut to like later on that night.
Well, it does the suburbia thing, right? Where night falls, basically all the husbands come home in their cars, and then all the wives go to their houses.
Yeah, there's definitely some like Stepford kind of quality here. Everything's very mechanical, and we'll get a lot of scenes of like everybody leaving all at once or everybody coming home all at once. There's
definitely some commentary being made.
Yeah, you can tell Burton like grew up somewhere like this. Like I think we talked about that with Frank and Weenie. It's a very similar neighborhood. And you get the sense that like maybe he's not entirely fond of where he grew up.
Right. Listen, if I grew up there, I wouldn't be fond of that either. Okay?
Yeah. But yeah, so we sit down to family dinner, and we've got Peg, her husband Bill, and their son Kevin. Kim is away on like a camping trip, so we won't get her for a little bit. Now,
Bill is a champ, because Bill is he's taking this all in stride. He's like, this is fine. This, he doesn't say the kid's weird or anything like that, but he's just, he's striking up a conversation and having just a normal, like, almost family conversation with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meanwhile, like, Kevin is staring at him like, those are crazy. Like, those, I need to take you to show and tell. And like, he's just, those are so cool. I bet you could kill a guy with one chop.
Right. And of course, Edward's just trying to eat his pea, his one pea.
Yeah, I do feel like, this family's been so, like, kind and open to him, but it does feel weird that they're not like, let's find a solution for you to eat, because he spends a lot of time trying to pick up silverware, and he can't do that, so then he's just like, I'll use my blades, and he's like, literally using 2 scissor blades, like chopsticks, trying to lift a single pea to his mouth, and he keeps dropping it every time. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, eventually I think he ends up, like, stabbing whole potatoes and, like, eating those. But it's like, yeah, there's got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm. But hey, you know what he can do? He couldn't eat peas, but he can cut butter like a champ. Because Peg offers him some butter, and he's just like, snip and smear. There you go. You're good to go on that. How's he going to eat the bread and butter? Who knows, but...
Well, that is one thing with, like, obviously this is a movie, and we, like, someone having these scissors for hands is not a real situation, but, like, depending on the moment, like, sometimes he is, like, incredibly graceful and can do all kinds of elaborate stuff with his scissor hands, and then sometimes he's just completely clumsy with them and can't do anything right. And it's basically just what works for the particular scene.
Right.
But yeah, so then like it cuts to like bedtime. Peg's like tucking Edward in. He's in the waterbed. Somehow it's not leaking all over him.
I guess that stuffed animal really did its job, right?
Right.
And then of course the next morning all the dads go golfing at once. Mm-hmm. They all just pull out.
Yeah.
Head to the golf course.
And then we're just back with Peg and Edward. She's trying various methods. She's putting like thick paste on his face and everything.
Yeah, mixing what is it, lavender paste with something.
Yeah. Right. Just it's one of those things where like she's just really, I think she's just trying to find a way to connect with him, and this is what she has. Like, there's a way you could read this where it's like she's trying to cover up these scars that like he should just be proud of or whatever, but like I think that it's really just like she's an Avon lady, this is what she has, and she's just trying to help any way that she can.
Right. She only understands the world through the lens of Avon.
Yeah. So we cut to just like later that day. Bill's back from golfing, and he's trimming hedges the old-fashioned way with like the big like hedge clippers. Oof.
And the kids are like zombies listening to the radio about the sports game.
And yeah, it's like he keeps having them turn it up because he can't hear it. Meanwhile, Edward is behind them starting to do his topiary art.
Right. And we know it's really good because we get motion blur. And, the hands are sped up slightly.
Yeah. So again, here, he couldn't eat his food, but now he's like a genius with the blades when he's doing his topiary art.
He truly studied the blade.
Right. And then we cut into inside. Peg sees that her answering machine is full, that like so many gossipy neighbors have called.
The neighbor ladies are into this Edward.
Yeah.
They're all about him.
And then outside, we've got one neighbor lady who's not so much. The creepy religious lady shows up and tells them that Edward is from hell and that they're all sheep.
Right, which, that's kind of funny.
Yeah. Edward's like, I'm not a sheep.
Right. But I do appreciate that in this one instance, everyone's like, okay, crazy lady. All right, Esmeralda, you go do your thing.
Yeah.
Don't you wish that one stuck that mentality stuck around
yeah.
a little bit?
A world where the satanic panic craziness is like agreed upon as being crazy by everyone. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
It would have been. But now we also have Dad sitting back drinking a not Coors. Basically, it's a Coors can turned slightly away from the camera, so you can't make out the logo. And he's just enjoying Edward making all the topiary of his family, like literally of the family.
Yeah. Back inside, the doorbell rings and Peg goes to answer, and it's like every woman in the entire neighborhood basically crowded around her door.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And they're wanting to know when's Peg going to have it. Peg's like, what are you talking about? The barbecue to introduce us to the new man.
Yeah. Yeah, so they basically just peer pressure her in. And they're like, we'll bring some of the side dishes. We got to get everybody here. You know, of course, he wants to meet us too. Like, you gotta let him meet the neighbors.
Right, and of course Esmeralda's like, no, we need to expel the perversion of nature. And the moment they said perversion of nature, Joyce was like, I am in. I am in for perversion. Let's do it.
Yeah, and so then we cut to like later on. They are getting ready for the barbecue, and Edward is helping chop lettuce, and he's great at that. He's just going to town.
Can you imagine like just the machine oil that would be seeping into the lettuce?
Oh God, yeah.
Like it had to be, right? Or his blades would be rusting.
Yeah,
I don't know. All right.
Peg's like, you don't need to be nervous. Just be yourself. Everything's, everybody's going to love you. You don't need to worry and try to put on airs or anything. And while she's saying this, she's using a can opener. And the combination of her talking about being himself and seeing a can opener triggers a flashback.
Yeah. We get to some weird scissor things opening up a can of pink goo.
Yeah. And so, yeah, well, of course, we're in the inventor's workshop. Like, basically, he's got this really elaborate factory. We kind of mentioned it earlier, and it's just making cookies. Yeah, it's turning the pink goo, adding an egg, whisking it, and then basically turning it out in a dough. And we've got the stomp. There's some stompy bots or robots that are pressing it down and kind of like flattening it out like you would do with a rolling pin. And then there's others with cookie cutter feet that are literally cutting out the patterns with every stomp. Yeah.
And then, of course, we have the oven that bakes the cookies.
Yeah, and like we said, all these things are very anthropomorphic. They all kind of have, like, humanoid shapes to varying degrees. Yeah. And then at the end of the conveyor belt, you've got Vincent Price, and he's very delighted with how well his machines are working. And he picks up a heart-shaped cookie and looks over at this little vegetable chopping robot that's just a little boy-shaped robot, and he just holds the heart up to its chest. And suddenly he's struck by an idea. Yeah, exactly. So my initial thought was he just turned the salad chopping robot into Edward. I think I'm wrong. That's kind of what I was thinking too. Is that he like slowly, it's like that ship. Ship of Theseus. Yeah, exactly. They just like one by one removed the parts from the salad chopping bot until all that was left was the chopping hands. Right. Maybe, very well could be that too. But then we cut back to the barbecue that's now kind of in full swing. And surprisingly, like considering how pushy everyone has been, they don't just like completely mob Edward. It's a little chill, there's just people kind of mingling around, but people are definitely wanting to talk to him. Like he's not getting a moment to himself, but at least it's not just like a swarm. Right. And the thing I actually appreciate about this is they actually are interested in him. He is not just a monster because he has scissor hands. In a lot of movies, he would be like, oh, he's, dangerous. Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, I had a conversation with somebody, like when we first were like starting this show, and somebody was like, I don't know that there's like, how are there that many Frankenstein movies? And I was like, there's a lot of movies that don't have Frankenstein in the title that are Frankenstein movies. And I specifically mentioned this one, and they were like, Edward Scissorhands isn't a Frankenstein movie. And I was like, it absolutely is. There's a mad scientist. 100% is. Yeah. But like this, I guess, is sort of like the interesting, because, as we keep talking about, like, you keep varying the story in different ways. And that's kind of, why we're doing this show. Right. And this is the moment that's different, like you got Edward meets the villagers and they don't chase him away with pitchforks and torches. Like they're open, they're willing to get to know him, like. Yeah. He looks scary like a Frankenstein monster does, but they give him a chance. And then they see that he has unique things to offer to the world. Yeah, exactly. Of course, he's making himself known to everyone. And it really seems like Joy is like, yo, I want him to rub those knives all over me. So she's into some knife play, if you're into that king. Yeah, Joyce is just, I mean, she's like, I think like the trope of like the cougar didn't really exist at this time to the degree that it does now, but like she is definitely that kind of character.
Jeez, I don't know if I'd call her a cougar. She's a tiger. Like, because she is predatory to it. Well, she's predatory. We could just leave it at that, I think.
Yeah. She like ends up kind of cornering. Or there's a scene first where there's like a war vet talking to Edward, and he's like, "Never let anybody tell you that you have a handicap.
Right.
Like, what you've got, it may be different than what other people have, but don't let people look down on you for it," which I thought was really kind of a nice little moment.
Yeah, but we also have I forget whose husband this is. But he offers to shake Edward's hand. He's like, "Oh, hey, you almost got me. But hey, you should come. You want to come to our weekly card game? But just know that once we shuffle the cards, you can't cut the deck." Okay.
Yeah.
Waka waka.
Yeah. But then Joyce finally gets her like moment with Edward, and she is flirting with him, and she's like, "You didn't try the ambrosia salad I made just special for you."
Personal opinion: that stuff is fucking gross.
Yeah, I'm not into that.
That's my opinion. If you disagree, that's fine. All opinions are valid. In my opinion, it's fucking gross.
Yeah, but she just starts like shoveling it into Edward's mouth. So she, unlike, Peg's family, she's like, I see that you're going to have a little trouble eating this, so I'm just going to help you with that.
Well, that gives everyone else an idea, because now they want him to try their ambrosia salad.
Yeah.
It's like 50 different variants of ambrosia salad.
Right.
Poor guy.
They also start, they see like what he's done around the yard here, and they start asking him for help in their gardens. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to a little later. Edward he's got a bunch of like vegetables and meat skewered on his fingers, and he's like grilling them over the grill.
I do like that Bill comes up and he's like, "All right, it looks like soup's on." And Edward turns and is like, "I thought these were shish kebabs." Well, yeah, that's after his mouth is full of ambrosia.
Yeah, it's a pretty
good. I thought these were shish kebabs.
Yeah, so it's a nice little barbecue. Everybody's mostly friendly, and I think pretty much from there it just kind of cuts away to like later on that night. Edward is
it cuts to Vincent Price teaching salad etiquette to Edward.
Oh right, yeah.
And we see Edward as half the man he once will be, or will be in the future, because he's literally just torso, head, and does he even have hands at this time? No, because Vincent is reading him some poetry.
Yeah, he's like reading like little limericks.
Mm-hmm. Right. And of course, Edward gives out his first laugh/smile, and the doctor, Vincent Price, is like, "Yeah, that's good deal. Yeah, that's funny."
And we also see there's like progress sketches of like robot to real boy. Like there's a couple different variations.
So he could very well be the salad robot. Interesting.
Yeah. And then that's pretty much all we get from that time. It's just like this little moment where like you can, and again, this kind of like contrasts with like a standard Frankenstein story, because like here we have an inventor that loves his creation. Mm-hmm. Is spending, he's not even fully created yet, and he's already like teaching him things and spending time with him. They're, telling him jokes, and like, yeah, it's very sweet. And it's interesting, that it's Vincent Price, who usually is like an evil character in most portrayals. So it's nice that they kind of let him have this nice fatherly moment as one of his last roles.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely a nice subversion in that, like you said, he's excited to have this thing. He's not repulsed by it. He's like, I am ready for this creation to be complete.
Yeah. So then we cut back to like present day.
And we get one of the most badass 80s vans of all time.
Right. Yeah, it's this black van with like flames all down the side. Yeah. It's a total like teen makeout van. And
then of course we get some of the most 90s kids of all time coming out of it.
Yeah, and so it's like there's like 3 guys and 2 girls. They're all of course this is Kim and her friends.
Jim and their friends.
Yeah. I don't know that any of the rest of them really get names.
No. Basically, they're like, 3 couples total at this point?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, mainly we're concerned here with Kim and her boyfriend, Jim, who, like, right away you can tell, like, he doesn't do anything too terrible in this first scene, but you can just kind of tell, like, this guy's a dick. Yeah.
He's kind of like, you're mine.
Yeah. and they're talking about like that they've gotten home early, that their parents aren't expecting them.
They've been camping.
This predates cell phones, so like they don't really have, they just like got home when they got home.
Mm-hmm.
So Kim goes inside, goes into her room.
Edward sees her. She doesn't see him, but he's like, "Oh shit, I know what's about to happen."
And it's one of those things where it's like, it's too, like, as soon as she's in the room, it's already too late. Like, if he tries to say something, he's gonna scare her.
Right.
So he's just kind of like, you can just, like, I've been in these moments where it's just like, oh no, I have snuck up on somebody and I can't, there's no way to back out of this situation now.
Right.
And so he's just like, you can see him processing, like, is there anything I can say? Is there anything I can do to make this not go badly?
Yeah, maybe she doesn't see me. This will be fine.
And of course, she takes off like a sweater, but she's still like not, she's not like undressed or anything. And then she does see in the mirror, she sees behind her that Edward's laying in bed. And obviously, she screams, runs out.
He screams. Stabs the bed so many times.
Yeah, there's no stuffed animal that's fixing this. He just starts flailing. Water's going everywhere. She runs out in the hall and is like, "There's somebody in my room. He's got an axe. He tried to kill me."
Yeah. Mom and Dad are like, "No, it's fine. That's Edward. He's fine. He's good."
And yeah, then he comes out like very like sheepishly. He's soaking wet, and just kind of tries to like walk off. And Peg's like, "No, go this way." She like turns him around.
I do like how the parents are still just kind of like, this is fine,
Right.
Whereas a lot of parents would be like, "This is shit. What the hell, Edward?" These people were like, "Hey, it's fine. It's all good."
Yeah, I think they really, they're just like, yeah, we didn't. Kim didn't know, Edward didn't know she was going to show up. It was a bad situation.
Yeah, but of course, obviously, Edward can't stay in Kim's room, so he has to go in the basement.
Yeah, so Bill takes Edward down and starts like opening up. They've got like a pull-away couch bed. Meanwhile, Peg's upstairs trying to like calm Kim down.
Yeah, and Bill makes Edward some lemonade. He calls it. That wasn't lemonade. That was definitely like bourbon or whiskey.
Yeah, so Edward's obviously a little keyed up too. He's like anxious about everything, and so Bill's like, "Yeah, a shot might calm him down."
Right.
But then they have this conversation. He's like, don't worry about it. Like teenage girls, they're all crazy. They develop these glands. Their bodies start to swell up. And Edward's like, "Glands," and he's like, "You don't even want to think about it. It's just." That's
a hell of a way to describe that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he also notices that Edward's having a little bit of a hard time picking up the drink. So he's like, "Here's a straw, buddy.
Right.
Just for you."
So, then upstairs, Peg's like, you should introduce yourself to Edward. It'll be okay. And like, I think you scared him. You all should meet and it'll be better.
Yeah.
And, Kim, she's not like as terrible as Jim is, but like, she's kind of like a self-absorbed teen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I don't understand why he's here. This is, he's interrupting my life. He was in my room. I don't like this."
Mm-hmm.
But she does go downstairs and like, they go to meet. And
right.
then,
now I will say, Bill is clearly drunk because his hand is on his face, like covering it up, and it's like, "I've been there, my man.
Yeah.
I've been down that road." And then Edward is like just staring off into nothing, so it's like he's probably gone too.
Yeah, and then like he goes to stand up to like meet Kim, and then just falls face forward, just like face plants on the rug. So yeah, that definitely did not go well.
No, and of course Bill's still there, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Speaking
Speaking of lemonade. The next morning, we have Joyce making lemonade with some sugar in the raw, which I was new at the time. Was it product placement, you think? I mean, it had to be, right?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
It feels very suburban, too, though, so it makes sense.
Yeah, so she's making them some lemonade, because Joyce is going to do what Joyce is going to do.
Yeah, and so, of course, he's, like, working in the yard. This is pretty normal, you got, like, the kid helping you in your yard. You give him something to drink. But she's like, "Do you want some lemonade?" And he, again, like you said earlier, like lemonade being alcohol, he's like not wanting that again, so he throws up.
Well, that could also be the hangover.
Yeah.
Or to get all those doughs.
Right. And then we see later on Kevin has taken Edward to show and tell.
One karate chop and that's it for you. Yeah. It's all over.
And then Edward does one of those, like, you know, where you like fold paper together and do like cutouts and make like the snowflakes.
And he kind of gets in like a karate stance a little bit too, right? Yeah. After Kevin tries to show him off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Later on, Kim is walking home with Jim and like one of her like female friends.
Yeah, they're talking about how creepy he is.
Yeah, and Kim's like, yeah, you know, she's kind of embarrassed that like they've got this weird house guest and everybody's paying attention to them and everything.
Mm. And he comes walking around the corner like, Kim! Hi, Kim!
Yeah, and Jim's kind of like poking fun. Like, he can tell that Edward has a thing for her, and he's kind of like, it's your boyfriend. You know, he's like kind of just, you know, being a dick.
Yeah.
And then like it cuts to they were all going over to dinner at the house. So like we've got Kim's whole family. They're the Boggs family, I think is their last name, and then plus Jim and Edward and whatever the girlfriend's name is.
Right. She really doesn't get a name and doesn't get any lines. She just stares at Edward like, this is gross. Yeah. Well, she will get a line here in a moment, but yeah. And Edward is carving up some roast beef.
Right, and he's like serving it up, and she's like, "I can't. You touched that. Those are your hands. Like, I'm not gonna eat that."
Right, and it's like that's fair, you know.
Right.
True. Once again, could be oily. Those are clearly his hands. But to be fair, also, he's probably not touching much, right?
Yeah. Just, I guess, shrubs and food. So, and then he gives a piece to Kim, and he ends up like dropping it in her lap. So she has to like get up and go clean up. Like the whole like conversation here is like very stilted and awkward, and like Jim is kind of like intentionally sort of like prodding for his own amusement, basically. Like he's kind of like ironically sort of making fun of everything that's happening at dinner.
Right. Well, he's also discussing how his dad won't let him quote unquote use his toys. His dad's apparently a dickhead, as far as Jim is concerned. Also, though, maybe Jim might be a little unreliable in that regard.
True.
And maybe his dad's like, "No, you're a fucking thief. I know you."
Yeah, that very well could be. But yeah, apparently the dad has like a really nice entertainment center. It's it's a top of the line VCR with 4 heads and a CD player.
Man, those simple days, right?
Yeah. But like,
of course, he locks
CD
them up
players back then were like, crazy expensive. But yeah, he's going on about how like his dad has all this nice equipment and he doesn't get to use it. Right. They start talking, like they kind of talk about money a little bit. And
Bill's like, "Hey, Ed, why don't you charge for your work? You're doing a lot of topiary work. You got to get some money. That's capitalism, baby, makes the world go round."
Yeah, and she's like, they gave him some cookies today, and he's like, "You can't buy a fancy stereo system with cookies, can you, Jim?" Right. And he's like, "No, you can't."
Right. I mean, you can survive off cookies. Well, maybe you couldn't. I don't know. But, I mean, they're food stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, they'll help you survive.
We cut to, like, the next day. Edward's gardening again, and then there's, like, a dog, and he's just kind of, like, for fun, just starts kind of grooming the dog as well.
Well, of course, once Edward starts grooming you, that becomes his next new business.
Yeah.
And like all the ladies are like, "That's amazing, that's beautiful."
Yeah, I mean, and it goes quick. Like, so it's pretty much, it cuts to like the whole neighborhood's lined up with dogs for him to groom. Mm-hmm. Joyce shows up and is like, "Why don't you cut my hair?"
Right, after he gives her dog a bouffant.
Yeah, and so he's like, "Okay, sure." So she sits down and he starts, flapping his blades all around her head. And this scene plays like a sex scene.
Almost, yeah.
Like she's like breathing in, like it cuts to shots of her toes curling up. Like it's very sexual.
Right, as he gently caresses her face with his knives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she ends up with this kind of like fancy, like mod asymmetrical kind of hairstyle.
And then all the other ladies are like, "You've got to do my hair like that." And he gives them all kind of like pretty cool punk rock dudes a little bit. Right?
Yeah. He's definitely an artist. Like they all have different hairstyles. He's having fun with this. Mm-hmm. Later, he's doing Peg's haircut, like at home, like not out wherever he was doing everyone else. And she calls the head of Avon to get ideas for better ways to deal with Edward's scars.
And of course, Kim comes in at this time and she's like, "Wow, Mom, your hair looks nice." And it's almost like Peg's ignoring her to help Edward.
Yeah.
Versus paying attention to Kim.
Yeah. So then we cut to like, I guess either later that day or the next day. Helen is taking Edward to the hardware store to get his blades sharpened.
Right. I mean, as you do, right?
Right, yeah, you got to take care of that equipment. And he sees Kim with her friends like off in the distance and just kind of like, she stops him in his tracks basically. Like every time he sees Kim, he's just kind of like in awe of her.
Yeah, he's like enamored with her.
So then it's like later on, he arrives home at the same time that Kim does with Jim.
And Kim's like, hey, do you have a key to the house? Because I left mine here. And Edward's like, I got this. Puts a scissor in the lock, and Jimmy's the lock open.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, so and then Kim and Jim go inside, and Jim kind of like, again, because he sucks, he's just like, he's kind of like, thanks, that was a good job. And then he's like, why don't you be a pal and yell if Peg comes home? Like, because clearly they're going to go fool around and don't want to get caught.
Yeah, but it's obvious that he's also like, I'm cataloging that talent for later.
Absolutely. And then we get this kind of great scene where like Peg and Edward are on like a local talk show. It would theoretically be like a cable access show or something, but it's like higher production. Like it looks nice, but it seems like it's a small community. Like everybody has heard about Edward. Like, he's
right. It's like hometown Sally, Jesse, Raphael, which for the time was a thing. It's not obviously hasn't been a thing for 30 something years.
But yeah, it's like the audience is asking Edward questions. There's a lady who says she's got a doctor that Edward might like to meet, and he's like, yeah, I'd like that.
I'd meet him, yeah.
And then another lady stands up, and she's like, but if you change, you'll be like everyone else. You won't be special anymore. And Peg, like, says, Edward will always be special.
Yeah. So that's like, another motherly thing, right?
Yeah.
He'll always be special to her. And also, I do like the reveal of his, like, really fancy suit with the gimp suit underneath.
Yeah. So then we get another lady who stands up and she's like, do you have a girlfriend?
Right.
And we cut away. We see that like Kim and Jim and Kevin are at home watching this. So when the lady asks if he has a girlfriend, Jim's like, I bet he's going to say
he have a girlfriend?
Yeah. Kevin starts kind of poking fun at her too. And like Kim starts getting kind of defensive, like she's starting to be protective of Edward a little bit here.
She tells, was it Kevin to shut up? And he's like, hey, I'm just following Jim's lead.
Yeah.
And then Jim says, one of the weirdest statements, he says, shut up, bubble butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a weird thing to say to one, a little kid.
Yeah.
Two, did it mean something different back then?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was a strange little turn of phrase as well.
Times they have changed.
Yeah. But so then back on the show, there's like tension. Like, does Edward have a girlfriend? What's he going to say? And he leans forward. Edward and Peg are sharing a single mic that's like between them. And so he kind of leans over and he touches the cord and I guess it like cuts it.
Right.
And gets shocked.
Sparks, yeah. And of course we can then cut back to Jim, who is cackling. He's like, that was amazing. I'd give my left nut to see that again.
Right. That's when like Kim really starts to be like, she's like, that's not funny, like he could have been really hurt. And she's very like protective and defensive of him and like annoyed with Jim for being a jerk.
Yeah. And then now we get to the part where everything changes a little bit. Yeah. So Joyce has decided to take Edward to their brand new beauty salon that she's basically going to use as her small business, but exploit Ed.
Yeah, it feels pretty like exploitative right away. And she's like, we can put like cosmetics over here.
And he's like, oh, yeah, like for Peg. And she's like,
I guess, whatever. Like, she's definitely very, like, concerned about herself here, not really looking at, like, creating, an opportunity for Edward.
Right.
But then she gets him into the back room, and she's like, I've got a couple different smocks. You want me to try them on for you?
Yeah, okay. And, of course, but he's sitting down in the chair, and he's like, yeah, sure, why not? He's innocent about this.
Yeah. And of course she like, turns on a little, she's got a little boom box, starts playing music and starts like, kind of dancing seductively as she's trying these things on.
Yeah, it's clear that she intends for the dance and modeling to spiral into something else.
Yeah.
She's making her intentions very well known.
Yeah, but like Edward's not really picking up on this, obviously. So she ends up just like full on. She's straddling him. She like unzips her like top. She's wearing like black lacy lingerie.
Well, doesn't she use his finger to like cut one of her buttons?
Yeah.
To expose. Was it lacy or was it like leathery? Because I feel like Joyce definitely paid for the she's into the bondage thing.
It's definitely like a corset of some kind.
Yeah.
Then the chair just falls backwards. We see both their like legs fly up.
Right. Almost saying like, oh, sexy times has happened. But then we see just Edward get up and fucking bolt.
Yeah. It's like he's running out of the store and she kind of follows after him and is like, Edward, come back. You can't do that.
Yeah. And she's pissed. Like, she is no longer an Edward fan now that he's turned her down.
Yeah. And Edward, like, he runs straight from there into a diner where
all the families.
Yeah, the whole family's gathered. So, like, they were, had this planned dinner and, like, he just, happened to leave at the right time. And they're kind of asking him how things went at the salon. And he's like, oh, it went really well. There's going to be a cosmetic counter where Peg can sell her Avon. Yeah. It went really well till we went into the back room when Joyce took off all of her clothes.
Yeah, then everyone's like, record scratch what? And it honestly looks like Kim's like a little offended. She's like, she took all of her clothes off for you?
Yeah, and Peg and Kim are both kind of just like, Bill's just like, I'm just going to keep talking through this.
God love Bill. Like, even Kevin's like, he's chuckling. And Bill's like, you know what? I heard nothing. This did not happen.
He just starts talking about, the thing about starting a small business, you got to go to the bank, you got to get a loan and everything.
Right.
And then it pretty much cuts straight to them at the bank. They're there to get a loan. And, of course, Edward has no credit. He doesn't have a car. He doesn't have a house. He doesn't even have a social security number. So, loan denied.
Yeah, of course, because banks are going to bank.
Yeah. So they're leaving, and Peg's like, don't worry, Edward. We'll figure something out. There's got to be something else we can do.
We cut to Jim and Kim, and he's like, we could break into my dad's house, steal some stuff, and sell it, right? We could make some money.
Yeah, and it wouldn't even hurt them because they've got insurance. It'd be just a mild inconvenience, and they never know. Back. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's clear that probably Jim's dad was like, this little shit's a thief.
Yeah.
He's stealing my shit.
And Kim, Kim's resistant, but he's like, but, if I got some money, I could get a van. We could, we wouldn't have to rely on our friends. We could go do stuff together. And we'd have a van where we wouldn't have...
razor blades. He calls Edward.
Yeah. And so then, like, it cuts to that night. Everybody's there. They're all in, like, all black and, like, toboggans and everything. Like, it's just very standard issue burglar clothes.
Right. We're breaking in and we're stealing some shit.
But they've told Edward that Edward doesn't even know this is Jim's house. They've told him that it's somebody who has stolen from Jim, and they're just
stealing it back.
Yeah. Edward manages to get through the door, goes inside, and then an alarm goes off. And
they basically, Edward goes into this one room, and then Jim's like, well, I'm going to set off the alarm. Fuck you.
Yeah. And it just like, it's like a Mission Impossible deal. Like suddenly, like he's in lockdown mode, stuck in this room, and
the shutters come down, the door's locked.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
So Kim and everybody, they're all able to escape. But Kim, she wants to stay and help Edward, but is pretty much like forcibly dragged away by Jim. And he's like, we can't do anything. There's no reason that we should get in trouble too.
Right. And she's literally like, you could just say this was a misunderstanding and clear all this shit up.
Yeah. And he's like, no, my dad would never believe me. Like, I'd be, he'd send me away or whatever.
He would prosecute me. Oh, you're his son, especially because I'm his son. Yeah. And I probably steal from him on the reg. Just saying.
Right. And so then, the police arrive and, they're yelling like, we're going to get you free. We're going to unlock the door and then you need to come out with your hands up. So Edward steps out, puts his hands up, and they're like, drop your weapons. And like, this moment is very tense because obviously, we know that Edward can't drop his weapons. And we also know cops do cop shit usually.
Yep, cops do cop shit. That's one of our lines that I want to just save because it's true. Yeah. They do. So yeah, they're like, we're going to drop you if you don't get rid of the weapons in the next 5 seconds.
But miraculously, the neighbors rush out to Edward's rescue, and they're like, we know him. He can't drop the weapons. And
those are his hands.
Yeah, and so, the police cuff him, they arrest him. He manages to get out of this situation safely, at least. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to like the police station. Bill and Peg are, coming to pick up Edward, but they find out that like he's got to stay overnight or something, but they still want to check on him.
Yeah. Now these guys, to me, this seemed like really good parenting. Okay. Cause they go in, they're like, this was our fault. We didn't, obviously he didn't mean to do anything. And they're like, we know that. We understand that. Right. So we didn't teach you exactly the right things in this case. So you just figured you had to do this. And then Peg's like, oh no, we know you needed money to start the salon, but this wasn't the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
They don't like just give him shit. They're like, they actually try to empathize with him, meet him on his level.
Yeah.
And already try to figure ways how to fix this.
And you can tell, like, Edward doesn't say anything from this scene, but like, you can tell that he like realizes what actually happened. Yeah. And that he's not going to sell out Kim. Like, no,
man, he ain't no snitch.
Yeah.
Because they're like, someone must have influenced you to do this. And he's like, it was all me.
Yeah. Then we get this one like really kind of weird scene where the sort of main police officer that's in this movie is talking to like a psychiatrist about Edward's isolation and like that he's got like a heightened imagination from being by himself for so long. Yeah. And the cop's basically, like, but he'll be okay out there?
Yeah. Well, and also he doesn't know right from wrong necessarily.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah, but he, like the cop, it's like, I don't know if he's concerned or he just needs to get him off the books or whatever, but he's like, but he's going to be okay if we set him free. And he's like, yeah, sure, fine. Yeah, he'll be fine.
He'll be fine, yeah. And that's weird because you don't really see, especially in real life, cops give a shit about, who they arrest. Well, this cop cares. This cop with a big heart.
Right. And so then we see, like, all the neighborhood, like, wives are all gossiping about Edward's arrest. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we knew he was bad news all along.
Oh, especially Esmeralda, who's like, see, I told you should have heeded my warning. He's of the devil.
Yeah.
But she sucks.
There's a bit here where, like, they imply that, like, he tried to assault Joyce.
Right.
That, like, that Joyce told them that he was the aggressor in that scene rather than her.
Yeah, he could have killed her if she didn't do what he asked her to do. Which, that's gross on her part.
Yeah, that's very, very gross.
Mm-hmm.
So then we do finally get, like, Peg bringing Edward home. There are, like, reporters on the front lawn, kind of, like, hounding them as they go inside. Peg's on the phone, like, people are calling, and she's, like, defending Edward.
Yeah, and of course, everyone's like, well, you shouldn't have your Christmas party this year, right? Or are you going to have it? And Peg's like, yeah, of course we're going to have the Christmas party. Nothing weird happened to stop that.
Yeah, we always do this. And then around then, like, Kim gets home. She knows what's happened, what Edward's done for her. So, she's thanking him and kind of apologizing. And she's like, I'm sorry that we told you, or, we made up this fake story or whatever. And Edward was like, I knew.
It was Jim's house the entire time, yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, then why did you do it? And he's like, because you asked me to.
Oof, not a good reason, my man, but okay, I understand.
Yeah. At that point, like, Jim shows up. Mm-hmm. And Kim goes outside and, like, she's arguing with him.
Yeah, because he's a dick.
But Edward just sees that, he was talking to Kim and then she chose to leave him to go talk to Jim instead. So he's upset.
The guy who effectively betrayed both of them.
Yeah. And so he starts tearing up the house, basically.
Yeah, he basically walks down the walls and I'm presuming that he's gouging into the walls, but it really doesn't look like it.
Yeah, you don't really see much effect there.
No.
But while he's doing that, so outside, Jim doesn't understand why Kim would be upset and is like, look, he's not in jail. That's because of me. Right. He uses the R word.
Yeah.
He's just, he sucks. And so, of course, he would be like this, so
right.
But
I do admit, at least he called Kim on a little bit of her own hypocrisy, because he's like, you could have gotten him out of this at any time. You could have just told everybody what happened. You didn't.
Yeah, so, you were there too. You helped break in.
Yeah.
Then we cut to, like, the family dinner, And Bill is like, we can, like, again, so like now, not only like Edward broke into this house, went to jail, and then came home and wrecked their house, and they're still having family dinner. Bill's like, we can fix the things you damaged here in the house, we'll work on that, but like, we need to talk to you about ethics. Like, clearly you're not understanding the way you're supposed to be.
He gives him an ethics pop quiz right at the table. Like, you find, what was it? You find $20 laying in the street.
It's a briefcase full of money, I think.
Briefcase full of money. Yeah, sorry. He's like, do you keep it for yourself? Give it to your friends and family. Buy your friends and family something, or buy your friends something nice, or yourself something nice, or take it to the cops. I mean, there's one clear answer here. I disagree with that. I believe in doing nice things for the family. I'm with Kim on this, but
yeah. Bill's like, don't confuse, you're confusing him. Like, there is the nice thing to do, but we're not talking about nice. We're talking about right and wrong. And yeah, sure, it's nice to give gifts to your loved ones, but like,
it's wrong to keep that money.
Yeah. Cut to some more scenes of like neighborhood gossiping. Everybody's talking about that they're going to skip, Bill and Peg's party this year. Everything's just too weird with Edward, and they heard he wrecked their house and all this.
And of course, he did try to sexually assault Joyce. So.
Yeah. She again like emphasizes that. Then we get like a couple kind of quick scenes. The family getting ready for the party. Kim watches Edward work in the yard, and you can tell she's starting to get feelings for Edward too. Like, she's kind of impressed with what he's doing, and sees what he's been doing for their family. Peg asks for another haircut that she doesn't really need, but I think she just wants Edward to feel needed.
Feel better, yeah. And I do like how Peg and Kim, they put up their fiber optic Christmas tree. Right. The old 80s, early 90s / late 80s Christmas trees that were the wildest things, man.
Yeah. Yeah, this is I mean, it's a very early 90s Christmas. It's a very California Christmas. Right. Bill is up on the roof rolling these giant, like,
rolls of cotton.
Yeah, like making the roof look like it's covered with snow, like these huge blankets of cotton. Obviously, because it's not going to really snow because they're in California.
And he's singing Christmas Day in the Morning.
Yeah. Kim and Peg, like you said, they're decorating their fiber optic tree, and Kim's in this sort of like almost like a wedding dress. It's like a very beautiful white dress.
Yeah.
She starts to hear snipping sounds outside, so she goes.
Yeah, and she also sees snow. Like, that's not a thing that happens in California, or at least not part of it.
So she goes outside, and Edward is making an ice sculpture, and as a byproduct of that, he's also making snow.
So Kim's like, you know what? This is the perfect time to go dancing in the snow, so that's what I'm going to do while he makes this ice sculpture.
Yeah, and this is one of the most beautiful moments of the movie. Like, it's definitely a centerpiece. She's like twirling in slow motion as the snow falls. The Elfman score is swelling. It's just this is the moment where like Kim falls in love with Edward because he created this moment for her.
Right. And of course, the moment she almost touches him, Jim has to ruin everything and show his awful face. As he calls out, Edward swings around, slicing into Kim's hand. And everything's going bad. And of course, Jim says, you can't help but destroy anything you touch.
Yeah.
You got to ruin everything for everybody. Even though Jim kind of ruined everything. But
exactly. It's very like quick then. Like, the family comes out, Jim's like, Edward stabbed Kim, you need to go help her. And I don't think they have time to like think about, like, they're not blaming Edward, but they also do need to take care of Kim's injury. So
right, well, Jim even tries to gaslight Kim. He's like, he almost killed you, And it's like, no, she knows that didn't happen. You know that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Everyone knows. Everyone except for the parents know you're lying.
Yeah, but in the moment, so like the whole family goes inside with Kim, and now Edward and Jim are alone, and Jim takes that moment to be like, look, you've hurt the people that you care about. You're a freak. You need to go away. Yeah. And
of course, by the way, we probably should add a trigger warning for gaslighting, because that's definitely what he does.
Yeah. And so this is another sort of like monster Frankenstein kind of moment where like he sees that like I'm a danger, I did hurt somebody that I care about. He's not wrong about that. And so he leaves and just starts walking down this, walking through the cul-de-sac or whatever.
Very much like a young teenage guy, though. He's very upset, very moody. Anytime he walks past one of the topiaries that he created, he like lops off a leg or cuts part of it off. He goes to what's her name, Helen's house, and she's like, Edward, you need to leave, you're gonna get in trouble. And then he just punctures the wheels on her car.
And then so while that's all going on, Kim comes outside. She's trying to find Edward. Jim's like, he's gone, and Kim is like, you need to leave, like, I don't love you anymore, I'm tired of dealing with your shit. And he's like, are you serious? I'm losing you to that? He's not even human.
Boo.
Yeah,
boo on you. Yeah. And after that, we then cut to the Esmeralda, or as I call her, crazy church lady, playing "We Three Kings" to a marimba beat.
Right.
What the hell? And I do like the fact that in her house she has a fluorescent cross. Like, man, all right, I know some people like that, but she also hears some snipping, right? So she slowly makes her way over to the window, throws it open, and we've got a giant topiary demon with some lights in it. She's like, ah!
It's
I'm like,
so
yes.
good.
Hell yes. You're amazing, Edward.
The cops show up. They're looking for Edward, and like there's a bunch of all the ladies are outside gossiping again, and they kind of point the police in the right direction.
They kind of point them in every direction, right?
Yeah, it's that sort of, when Sparky was 10 feet tall in Frankenweenie, like, they're just all kind of like, it's chaotic and they're just freaking out.
Yeah.
Then, of course, Peg and Kim, they're worried about Edward. Peg's like, I'm starting to think that, like, I made the wrong decision by bringing him down. Like, at first, it feels like this is going to be a moment where she's like, he's wrecked our lives. But she's like, we have wrecked his life. Like we brought him to this completely new world that he wasn't prepared for and wasn't accustomed to.
He would have been safer up in the mansion.
Yeah, he's not safe down here. Peg and Bill decide to go look for him. They get in the car, and Kim wants to go, but they're like, no, the party's still going on. You need to stay here in case guests show up.
Which we know nobody's coming, right? Yeah. Everyone's lying.
We get a kind of a sweet little moment where like Edward has kind of calmed down. He's sitting on a curb, just kind of sad. And then a dog comes up and sits next to him, and the dog has like long shaggy hair in front of its eyes.
Yeah, and he's just like snip, cuts it for his so he can see. And the dog nuzzles up to the guy. It's like, we know Edward is a good guy.
He smiles at that and he feels a little better. Like, he can use these for good too. The blades are. They're tools, and tools can hurt and they can help. It just, it's how you use them.
Right.
But then he sees a police car approaching.
He has my reaction to cops. Oh, fuck cops.
Yeah.
Or it's the cops.
Yeah. So he goes and runs and hides and ends up, I'm not sure if he like made a loop or something, but he ends up like back at their house really quickly and goes inside and
lets himself inside with his little special trick to open the door.
And Kim's there alone, and she's really glad that he's okay.
Yeah.
And at first she's like, hold me. And he kind of like,
nah.
Yeah, he raises his hands up and he's like, I can't. And then she like kind of grabs his arms and wraps them around her and, shows him that, yes, you can. Like, it kind of goes back to like the veteran saying like, don't let people tell you you're handicapped. Like, you have a different situation, but you just have to learn how to adapt and use it. Yeah,
and then we get another like memory where the doctor is going to give him this brand new set of hands.
And he's got he holds up the hands, and Edward's kind of like looking at them, and then he just kind of collapses. And as he falls forward, just to make it that much worse, Edward's scissor hands like puncture the flesh hands and just like cut him up as the inventor kind of like collapses.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I do like the extra touch that when Edward's trying to stroke his face to see if he's still alive, he cuts him.
Yeah,
like there are all those cuts that start appearing.
Yeah, and that definitely feels like, again, this whole thing where just like he hurts everyone that he loves. And that's, I think, like he's hugging Kim while he's having this memory. And I think he realizes that like they can have this moment right now, but he can't stay. He's going to keep hurting her if he stays.
Well, because Jim can't be awful, just regular awful. He has to go that extra mile of awful. he's getting drunk in the back of his van with his friend, his best friend. And basically, he's like, you know what? We're going to go pay a visit to Kim and kick Edward's ass, pretty much.
Yeah.
And the best friend's like, man, we're drunk. I don't want to go driving. I want to be responsible. And Jim's like, the fuck you are. We're going after that guy.
Yeah, so they're driving towards the family's house, in that big van, swerving all over the place. Meanwhile, Kevin is coming home from a friend's house, walking through the neighborhood. So obviously we know where this is going.
Well, so does Edward, because he actually sees out the window the giant van basically driving through yards coming towards Kevin.
Yeah, and so he rushes out, knocks Kevin out of the way of the van, but in the process falls on top of Kevin and cuts Kevin's face, and Kevin doesn't know what's happening. He's scared. It's a chaotic moment, and he's kind of sort of fighting Edward away and getting cut more in the process. It's it's just one of those scary moments where everything kind of is just heightened.
Right, but of course everyone comes in on Edward, and it looks like he's just attacking the kid.
Yeah, so it's a bad moment, and Peg and Bill show up. They get Kevin and are taking him inside, and they're like, Edward, come home with us. They immediately there's no question for them. They know what happened. They trust that Edward would never hurt Kevin, right. and so they're not turning on him the way the rest of the neighborhood is. But before Edward can try to go home, Jim attacks him.
Of course.
But of course, he's a flesh person attacking a man with, knives for hands. So he ends up getting cut in the process.
Right. And then, of course, he's like, see, he tried to murder me, because Jim's the worst.
Yeah. We hear police sirens approaching, and Kim's just like, Edward, run. Then we get pretty much, a very classic monster movie scene where Edward is running through the neighborhood with a mob
slowly chasing.
Yeah, they're all chasing after him, and he gets to the gate, the mansion gate, and our main police officer is the only person to have caught up to him. And he just fires the gun a couple of times in the air and is just
run.
Yeah, run, go inside, don't, never come back. So then, yeah, the rest of the neighbors arrive, and the police officer's like, it's all over, go home. Yeah. And it's a strange moment, because it's I want to think that in this moment the cop's just I'm telling people that
he's dead.
I've handled it, he's dead.
Yeah.
They don't need to worry about it anymore. But at the same time, he also just gets in his car and leaves, and it's
right.
He should know there's no way they're gonna leave.
Right, these nosy motherfuckers aren't leaving well enough alone.
Yeah, so you could definitely interpret this scene two ways. It could be that he thinks he's fixed it, or that he's washing his hands of the situation and letting frontier justice handle it instead.
This guy actually seems like he cares, though, which I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that I would not give any other police officers.
Yeah, I hope so. It does feel like he's a more well-rounded police officer character than we usually see. It
feels like he was just kind of well, I did everything I could do. Now I'm just leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, he just wasn't very thorough, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, he probably should have told everyone, go home. Don't do this. Go home.
Yeah. And so the crowd starts pushing in after he leaves. But meanwhile, Kim has managed to sneak around the back and comes upstairs. She finds Edward in the attic, just like Peg did at the beginning. And Edward's first concern is did I hurt Kevin?
Right. And of course Kevin's fine.
Yeah, he was just scared, and she was like, I was scared too. I was, I heard the gunshots. I was afraid you were dead. And then they kind of have a moment where it looks like they're maybe going to kiss. They're getting close. But then Jim shows up.
He ruins everything, doesn't he?
Yeah. And he's got a gun now. I don't know where he got it from, but he just
probably stole it from his dad, let's be honest.
Yeah. And he's just firing wildly. He could have easily hit Kim. He's not aiming at all. And then attacks Edward. So there's just there's this kind of chaotic fight scene. I think Kim ends up getting something heavy and
right. Well, he starts beating Edward down with a fire poker. Somehow the gun gets wrestled free. He starts beating Edward down with a fire poker. And then, like you said, Kim's as he's about to take the final swing, Kim's like, no, motherfucker. And then she takes a 2x4 or a piece of roof and just bashes it over his head. So Jim's down.
Yeah, and so they're all three kind of just laying on the ground at this point. And Jim starts to get up, and Kim takes Edward's hand and like, holds a blade up to Jim's throat.
I'll kill you.
Yeah, I will kill you with Edward's hand.
Mm-hmm. But of course, Jim, he's an asshole. So he literally calls bullshit. And smacks Edward's hand away and smacks her back. So he's ready to go in for the kill. He's like, I'm going to kill both of you.
Yeah.
As he goes in, Edward actually, for the first time, intentionally hurts Jim. Mm-hmm. And he does it with just jabbing that hand right in that chest.
Yeah. And then just shoves him out the window.
Felt really good. Not going to lie. That felt really good.
Yeah, it's very satisfying. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, of course, he has to throw someone out a window because he's a Frankenstein monster.
As you do.
Yeah. And so then, you know, of course, we see Jim laying there bleeding out on the ground. Edward and Kim look out the window. They see the mob of neighbors approaching Jim's dead body and realize like there's no time. Like we've got to deal with everything right away. Kim's kind of crying.
She even declares her love for him. She's like, I love you.
Yeah. And they kiss. And yeah, it's a really sweet moment, but it's a really bittersweet moment because they finally get their moment together, but they also know it's their first and also their last.
Right.
So then Kim rushes downstairs. On the way out, she happens to notice the perfect thing that she needs to sell everything, which is a spare scissor hand. Mm-hmm. So she comes outside and she's like, the roof collapsed, they killed each other, they're both dead, and she holds up this hand.
Yeah. She shows the hand, everyone's like, oh shit. Oh, okay.
So everybody kind of disperses, and then we kind of like fade back into the grandma telling the story to her granddaughter.
Right. And she never saw him again after that night.
You know, the kid's like, how did you know? And she's like, because I was there.
That girl, yeah. I was there.
And she's like, you could still go. Like, he might still be up there. And she's like, I'm old now. I'd rather that he remember me how I was. Yeah.
And then we cut to Edward cutting topiary in his mansion / garden.
And of course, because he, is not a regular human, he's still the same age. Like, he has not aged a day. The granddaughter says, like, how do you know he's still alive? And she's like, well, before he came, it never snowed, and now it does.
That's right.
And sometimes you can still catch me dancing in it.
Right, which is a weird thing to think about your grandma just dancing in the snow, right? I mean, also, first off, she clearly had kids. How does Grandpa feel about playing second fiddle to this guy?
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Yeah, that we never really deal with any of that.
Damn. That's like Rose all over again, man. Brutal.
And then we cut back up to the mansion. Edward is in the attic, and he's making ice sculptures.
Okay, how though? This bothered the shit out of me.
Like where the ice comes from.
Who's dropping off the ice?
Yeah.
He's not making that. He ain't got no freezer. Who's bringing the ice to this man? Somebody knows he's still alive there, and they're covering for him, but that's okay. We appreciate that.
But, the attic has the big hole in the roof, so that's perfect as he's chopping the ice. The snow is blowing out of the roof and raining down on the neighborhood.
Right,
and
but did you notice that he wasn't just cutting sculptures? Those were actual scenes from different parts in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, the main one is, Kim dancing, of course.
But yeah, there was a bird. I forget where the bird popped up. There were the kids playing ball. And there was one more that I forget at this time. But yeah, it was like all little small scenes from the movie.
Yeah.
Like their own little things. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the ending to this is just beautiful. Because, yeah, you see the ice sculpture of Kim. Mm-hmm. Then you see like an outside shot of all the snow coming out of the house. And then there's kind of like a sort of a fade in of like a shot of young Kim dancing in the snow again. Yeah. And then, it kind of goes to credits from there.
Yeah, we get the more of the house blowing snow out of it, and then credits.
Yeah,
and that's it. We didn't get an abrupt ending. There were no science wheels, but still a pretty good movie after all this time.
Yeah, it really it does. I was thinking about it. Tim Burton he's one of those directors who he's got a similar style, and he's been doing it for so long that there's kind of diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. And I think when that happens, especially if Tim Burton kind of has a particular fan that I think most, he's got a Hot Topic vibe to it. Right? And I think that it does him a disservice because
it's more than that.
Yeah. And I think, but before I just watched this for the show, if you asked me to list my top 100 movies or something, I probably wouldn't have put this on this. But if you ask me, like, do you like Edward Scissorhands? I'm like, yeah, it's a good movie. But then when you watch it, you're like, this is a perfect movie. Like, it is a really, really good movie. And, I think, like, in recent years, his output may be a little bit more hit or miss. But, like, there's no denying that the first, like, 5 or 6 movies that Tim Burton put out are just all
bangers.
They're like, almost all of them are just, like, completely perfect.
Here's my take on it. I think the problem is that Tim Burton fell under Tim Burton's own shadow. Like, his own shadow eclipsed him, and now he's like, how do I get out from under this?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Because, like, all right, so if I liked the Sweeney Todd movie that he did. Yeah. But once again, that was a very Tim Burton movie. Mm-hmm. Whereas whenever he did the Alice in Wonderland stuff, I was like, this is garbage. I'm not really into this.
Yeah, the Alice in Wonderland, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory thing. Woof. Like, I never even saw the Dumbo movie.
Who did? I don't know anyone.
Yeah, I don't know. The last thing he made, I think that was... Well, I guess we should say the new Wednesday series has come out on Netflix, and he directed the first 4 episodes of that, and it's really good.
Good. Yeah. But once again, Anthony, what does it have in common? It's that gothy, like, almost Hot Topic vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it's definitely like, he's kind of like Wes Anderson, where it's just like, if you get tired of his thing, you're just not gonna, like, you just can't do it anymore. But like, if you can kind of meet Tim Burton where he thrives, he still, like, the movies still work. Like, they're still, and especially this one. Yeah,
well, so this is like obviously a Frankenstein story, but told through like a grim fairy tale lens almost, right? Mm-hmm. So it's more fantasy than horror.
Yeah.
And I dig it. It's good.
Yeah. And I was thinking about it too, like, not only like it, in terms of like that there's like an inventor and a creation and all that, but like even, it has these layers of like, you've got the grandma telling the story, then you've got the main story, and then you have Edward flashing back to his invention and everything. It feels like the same, the
structure.
Yeah, the exact same structure with the sea captain and then Victor's story and then the creature story. Mm-hmm. I think that's intentional.
Yeah, 100%. Has to be, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But you know what I did notice about that? Something contrary to what we just said. Nobody passes out on the regular.
Right.
Everyone stays upright. Well, I guess technically he did get drunk. So, okay. Maybe.
And the creator collapses, but it's just the one time, and he does not wake up.
No, yeah, that's true. Oof. Yeah. Sad face. Plus, it's Vincent Price. Literally, I think, if not his last role, pretty darn close.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's just... It's a movie that, like, if you haven't seen it in a while, you just kind of sleep on it, and you're like, yeah, it's fine. But, like, oh, man, it's still, if you watch it, like, I hadn't seen it in years. In fact, like, I went to put my DVD copy in, and it was a full screen DVD. It was that old. Like, it was, It was like that era. So I was like, I can't watch it this way. But coming back to it after quite a while, like, it still hits. Like, all the moments that are supposed to get you, they got me.
So if you want a Christmassy, gothy story, this is the one. Yeah. Well, aside from another one that we're going to be talking about next week. But that one's more of a nightmare.
Yeah, so, obviously with the Decem-Burton thing and it being, December, of course we're going to talk about Nightmare Before Christmas.
You got to, right?
Which, of course, we also need to acknowledge was not actually directed by Tim Burton. Right. I think he wrote the original story that the screenplay was based on, and like did a lot of the character design, a lot of the original drawings, and produced it. But of course, it was directed by Henry Selick, who also did like Coraline and Wendell and Wild, that just recently came out on Netflix. That's really good with Key and Peele. But yeah, so that will be next week. I guess. Do you have anything else about Edward Scissorhands?
That's all I got.
Okay.
Where can they find us, Anthony?
So you can, we're trying all the different social medias. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram and Hive and Tumblr. We're on YouTube. All these are The Frankencast. We're also, you can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com, or you can find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast.
Absolutely. Any interaction, good interaction, all that stuff. In these tumultuous times, we don't know, like, where we're going to be. But we appreciate you all following us, so being with us.
Yeah, we do.
All right. Well, in that case, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.